workshop, and we especially want to thank Dr. Harris because she's the one who's going to do the hard work today. As many of you know, I'm the Associate Dean for Graduate Studies in the Faculty of Science and Technology. And I do in Science and Technology most of the PhD upgrades and the PhD orals. And it's open to the audience, and many of our graduate students will have been at some of these sessions. And what I am noticing in Science and Technology is the quality of the documents, the thesis document, both for the upgrade and for the PhDs, are declining. So usually you write a very, run-of-the-mill report to indicate what the recommendation of the examiners or the assessors are. But these days I'm finding out that even after the thesis has been examined and the upgrade document has been reviewed by the assessors, when they come to the oral examination, they still have a long list of corrections. And so I have to document all of those, and my reports are getting longer. And I'm worried about the time when, we haven't had in science faculty any upgrade or PhD thesis that hasn't been awarded, except once we had one where the student had to revise the proposal and it still didn't make it. And this is in the last 10 years when I've been doing it. But I've been seeing the trend and I'm very worried. So Dr. Harris is here to show us how to get our house in order and how to produce better thesis. Remember, it doesn't matter the quality of the science that you do. If you don't write it properly, then that's going to be a problem. And I don't know about anybody else. I see we have nearly 70 people online. Specifically, I don't like writing, and I still make a lot of errors. And I just want everybody to try and avoid those situations where the document is written so poorly that the science that is done and the effort that is put in is not coming through. So this is what we are here to do. So part of my job this morning is to tell you a little bit about Dr. Harris. And she sent me her CV and I was pleasantly surprised because, Dr. Harris, when I was a little girl in St. Elizabeth, I used to go to the library and I used to borrow books from the library, and they used to have reading sessions and lots of activities around the public library. And that's how we always thought of librarians as little girls. But now that we're adults, you realize that librarians are researchers and academics in their own right. So Dr. Harris currently is the senior librarian and the head of the Science and Engineering Branch Library, providing science, technology, engineering, and math, that is STEM research support to the Faculty of Science and Technology and to the Faculty of Engineering. And she's also an adjunct senior lecturer in one of our MSc course. I know she teaches in the research method course. So Dr. Harris got her PhD in education from the University of Sheffield in the United Kingdom. And she has 2 master's degrees, one in library and information studies and another in government, specifically public sector management. She has also had transformational and leadership and management training at the Mona School of Business, as well as a John Maxwell course in leadership. Dr. Harris had several awards during her career, including the J. Jordan IFLA OCLC Early Career Development Fellowship, and recently she was elected to serve as a delegate for the Americas Regional Council on the Online Computing Learning Center Global Council. In 2016 and 2017, she was recipient of the Library and Information Association of Jamaica Award for Research and Publication. In 2016, she was the recipient of the Principal Awards for Best Research Publication. And in 2018, she won the Principal's Award for Most Outstanding Researcher. So Dr. Harris, since 2007, has served in several capacities within the Library and Information Association of Jamaica. And she is currently the chief editor for two most recently publication volumes of the Library and Information Association of Jamaica Journal, and she remains the chief editor. And she was also the founder of the University of the West Indies Library and Information Student Society. Dr. Harris has supervised several graduate students within the Department of Library and Information Studies at UWI. She has more than 28 publications, of which 19 of these are scholarly publications, so professor in the making. And her area of research include trends and issues in Jamaican academic librarianship, as well as science and technology, engineering, and STEM librarianship. Dr. Harris is also a keen advocate for initiatives that seek to elevate the status of academic librarianship at the local level and at the international level. Okay, so you can see that she is well qualified to lead us in this workshop. And I can tell all the graduate students that are with us this morning and many of the academics who might have questions in the future, when you are writing your thesis and maybe putting a publication together, I know that Dr. Harris has always been very comfortable and able to help guide us in some of these issues. Me, myself, sometimes when I have questions about references, I will give her a call and send her an email, and she's always very gracious to guide us. So she's our main presenter for this workshop this morning. Dr. Harris, thank you very much. Over to you.
Good morning, and thank you, Professor Roy. UWI Mona Library, good morning to everyone present for this workshop. I am very pleased that you could attend, because without you, of course, we would not have a workshop. Today, we will focus on the thesis writing process and the role of the Mona Library in helping you to complete your thesis according to the UWI's thesis guidelines for structuring your thesis and according to international referencing expectations. I am your presenter. You may note my contact details. Feel free to send me an email at any time. With me this morning, but in the chat, are Mrs. Karen Terrell, who is reference librarian in the Science and Engineering Branch Library, Miss Sherry Lee Smith, who is library clerk in the Science and Engineering Branch Library. They will be managing the chat segment of the presentation. A little context for this workshop. The candidate, the supervisor, department, and faculty have a shared responsibility to ensure that the quality of the thesis is acceptable. As theses are contributions to knowledge and are open to public scrutiny, sound academic standards must be adhered to in their preparation and presentation. And so you may be wondering, what does the Mona Library have to do with thesis writing? In respect of quality, the UWI Mona Library also shares in this responsibility. Prior to your submission to the OGSR and also post-submission to the OGSR. And so today, I will be sharing with you a little on the UWI Mona Library generally and specifically on the role we play in thesis preparation with an emphasis on best practice. And in respect of the role we play in thesis preparation, I will take you through the pre-submission phase as well as the post-submission phase. At the end, we'll have activities and conversation. Now, at the end of today's presentation, it is my hope that you will move from not knowing the library's quality partnering role to knowing, and not only knowing, but calling up the library's quality partnering role. From indifference to the best practices for formatting and referencing to mindful implementation of best practices for formatting and referencing. So at the end of this presentation journey, it is my hope that we will move to the green area. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present and engaged. It is the practice of purposefully bringing one's attention to experiences, and we hear a lot about mindful eating. Today, I want you to consider mindful quality thesis writing. Now, we are one UE.
No. I need to have a line more, but I can't find them.
We are one UE spread across 5 campuses. Consistent with this multi-part, multinational characteristic feature of the UE, each campus has a library with branches in some instances, and each campus library has a campus librarian who is in charge of the campus library and its branches. The UE Mona Library, we were established in 1948 as the main library, so we're pretty old. We're the largest and oldest university library system of the UE. The main library, we were initially located in the wooden building, still known today as the Old Library. But with growth of our collection, we moved to our current site in 1952. Further growth of the university's programs and student population resulted in more extension to the library's collection and building, and this resulted in the establishment of 4 branch libraries, namely the Science and Engineering Branch Library in 1973, the Medical Branch Library, the Western Jamaica Campus Library, and the Law Branch Library. And so the Mona Library is truly one library spread across 5 locations. Now, the Mona Information Literacy Unit of the UE Mona Library is key in this process. Now, this unit is physically located in the main library, but the services extend to include all the branch libraries I mentioned earlier. So while the unit is physically located in the main library, the work is carried out in all 5 libraries. Now, the persons with direct responsibility for this unit are Dr. Alicia Palmer and Miss Yolanda Tugwell. And here is the contact information for Milu. Now, this graphical presentation is a concise summary of the slides to come. It gives the big picture of the thesis process, the various bodies involved, and highlights each person's responsibility in the process. You can see the library in this diagram and the role we play. Note, we are involved in almost every step. Let's now look in more detail at some of the areas specifically involving the library and some best practices that should be considered in respect of ensuring an excellent experience with the thesis process and with your Mona library. Let's begin by looking at some best practices prior to submission. Now, firstly, the candidate should make a thesis consultation appointment. And you may be wondering, what is this and what does this involve? Well, it involves the candidate making an appointment with a monolibrarian for the purpose of reviewing his theses in respect of proper referencing as per the department's preferred citation style, in respect of proper formatting as per the UE thesis guide. Now, often candidates are not aware of their department citation style, and so I encourage candidates to check with their department or supervisor for this, or you may refer to Appendix 1 of the thesis guide, and Ms. Smith will send the link to the soft copy of the thesis guide momentarily. There is a thesis consultation appointment request form, which is used to book the appointment. All the links that will appear on each slide, Ms. Smith will share those with you in the chat. So there is a thesis consultation appointment request form, which is used to book the appointment. This form is available in the main and branch libraries, and it is also available on our website. Normally, the candidate is expected to complete and submit the form, whether via email or in person, along with a copy of the completed thesis. And you can submit a copy of your completed thesis physically, or you can convert it to PDF, email it to us, or send it to us via Dropbox. Why do a consultation? I hinted to this earlier. Referencing and formatting errors can be highlighted from early, giving you, the candidate, an opportunity to attend to these. And so theses submitted will be more consistent with the guidelines of the referencing style, as well as with the UE thesis guide, and less errors to fix post-submission and return of the thesis to the candidate. So, as a best practice, supervisors should ensure the candidate makes this appointment, and the candidates should too ensure that they make this appointment. Now, as mentioned earlier, the thesis consultation process involves the candidate making an appointment with a monolibrarian for the purpose of reviewing his or her thesis in respect of proper referencing as per preferred citation style. And some persons refer to citation style as reference style, citation guide, or citation manual. Now, and also in respect of proper formatting as per the UE thesis guide. Let us look at the first section of this, proper referencing. So the quality role we play, the role is twofold: proper referencing and formatting according to the UE thesis guide. Now, in respect of proper referencing, let us focus on that aspect. Now, during the consultation, we go through the in-text and end-of-paper references with a view to ensuring correct application of the referencing style. For example, we check for the correct application of the referencing rules for works acknowledged in text, works acknowledged at the end of the paper, making sure books versus journals versus websites versus other types of resources that you may have incorporated in your thesis are cited according to the rules of the referencing style. Now, the rules for each resource type are not the same. The order and level of bibliographic details provided are consistent with the referencing style. For example, publisher and place of publication are required for books but not for journals. We also check how the candidate set out, for example, works with 4 or more authors, works with no author, works with no date, works with an edition, A chapter from a book versus an entire book. Works with singular author, two authors, more than two authors, as a citation style states how the candidate is to lay out each. And these are areas where errors are frequently made. So we ensure that we check these. We check long quotation, short quotation, and believe it or not, punctuation is very important. We check for references missing from the list, but mentioned in text. And we point out references in text and at the end of the paper not correctly done, and which should be corrected by the candidate. It is important that the candidate is able to distinguish amongst the various types of resources and provide the full required bibliographic details specific to each type of resource and specific to the citation guide. Now, achieving this often presents a challenge to candidates. So, as a best practice, the candidate should make an appointment to speak with a librarian regarding referencing. The Mona Library has physical copies of some of the referencing guides, and you may access these via UE Link or Gateway to find in all print and electronic resources of the UE. And the Mona Library can point the candidate to online citation guides. We also provide workshops or seminars on referencing, finding resources, and more. So your lecturer may request such a session for his or her class, or you can request one-to-one. Now, in referencing, consistency is key, and adherence to a referencing style is a must. You cannot reference how you please or how you choose. You must reference in text and also at the end of your paper, and this must be done according to the rules of the referencing style. Now, how you reference in text is different from how you reference at the end of your paper. For example, in text, only brief bibliographic details are required. For example, author's surname and date, while at the end of the paper, the full bibliographic details are required. For example, author's full name and other elements. Now, let us look at the other aspect of our role, which is the formatting aspect as outlined by the UE Thesis guide. So we use this little blue book to guide our format checking. Now, again, there are areas of frequent error. In respect of the format, we go through the thesis with a view to ensuring the guidelines for arrangement have been met, and these frequently occurring errors are pointed out. Now, while we do this, it is also important that as a best practice, the supervisor is too aware so that he or she can guide you, the candidate, accordingly. Let us look at some guidelines that candidates often miss, some areas where errors occur very frequently. Now, the objective of pointing these out is to ensure that you avoid these, is to ensure that you practice mindful thesis writing. Note the sequence of the arrangement of the parts of the thesis. You have three sections. You have the preliminary pages, the text of the thesis, and end pages. Note in particular, and everything that I will share with you is available in the thesis guide, and Ms. Smith would have shared the link with you. Note in particular, the preliminary pages should be in Roman numerals, single spaced, except the table of contents and preface. And again, you can almost guarantee that candidates always make an error here. The thesis should have a left margin of certain specification, a top, bottom, and right margin of a certain specification. Also, the text of the thesis should be in Arabic numerals. So the text of the thesis is where you would have your chapter 1, your chapter 2, your chapter so and so. So that section should be in Arabic numerals, and it should be 1.5 spacing, whereas preliminary pages would be single spaced with 2 exceptions. The text of the thesis should be 1.5 spacing. The appendices and references should continue the Arabic numbering sequence. Sometimes candidates start different kind of page numbering when they get to the appendices, or if the appendices has the content of a page in one of the appendix. In one appendix has, let's say, page 5, you will see page 5 just appearing like that. The appendices should continue the Arabic numbering sequence. And again, these are areas almost always not properly attended to. Now, the title page is another area where errors frequently occur. Now, note that the title of the thesis should be in bold, capital letters, single spaced, and centered at the top of the page. For example, note as well the layout for the MPhil, which is on the right, the MPhil and the PhD, differs from the layout for the MSc. I'll just point out 2 differences. The use of the word by for the MPhil and the PhD, and look at submitted in partial fulfillment for the MSc versus submitted in fulfillment. Additionally, note the spelling of the word fulfillment. And again, we check for all of this. Note the spacing in between. Pay attention to the spacing, where the spacing is not just there for spacing. It should be adhered to. Note Department of Geography. Sometimes candidates may send in their thesis with Geography department, but you have to follow the guidebook exactly. Again, these are areas that could be better attended to. Note as well frequently occurring errors with pagination. The page number should consistently appear in the top right-hand corner of the page. So we don't want to see the page number in the center or at the bottom, top right-hand corner of the page. Headings for figures should consistently appear at the bottom of the figure. Headings for tables should consistently appear at the top of the table. The acknowledgements should be on a single page. The heading abstract is to be placed in bold, capital letters at the top of the page, centered, and same font size throughout. For example, this is how you're to set out your abstract. Note the keywords and the required punctuation after each keyword. If you put another punctuation, that would be incorrect. Again, although we check for these, the candidate should apprise yourself of these rules. And these rules are all stated in the UE thesis guide. Note as well, the table of contents should not include the item table of contents in the listing. Each chapter should begin on a new page. Now, this is a popular one where candidates include display pages. Display pages are not allowed. Let's look at the report. So at the end of the consultation, there is usually a written report, particularly in the instance where the thesis and the form were submitted electronically. Now, the written report for the thesis consultation is not mandatory. You may not necessarily get a written report, especially if you just did a go through, which is where you just come in, talk to a librarian, and the librarian go through your thesis with you. Oftentimes, the candidate normally takes his or her notes during the consultation, but of course, this is not recommended during the pandemic. So during the pandemic, you should just try as best as possible to stick to sending us an email with your thesis and the consultation request form, and allow for 1 to 7 business days to get a response. Now, here is a specimen consultation report. So if or whenever I do a thesis consultation, so let's say I got a thesis to review, normally I would give to the candidate a report looking like this. Note for this report that I'm about to show you, the Chicago Manual of Style, which we call CMOS, 17th edition was used. So this is a specimen report. So I comment on the title page, the abstract and the keywords, dedication. I seldom ever write as per UE thesis guide, because normally the errors I mentioned earlier, they are usually visible at each subsection. So this is what a consultation report would look like. And oftentimes I would extract the specific section of the referencing style guide or the specific section of the thesis guide. So to make it a little easier for students when they're doing their corrections. All right, so the candidate post receiving this report should make the necessary corrections. So that's the pre-submission phase. So the takeaway from the pre-submission phase should be you can do a consultation with the library where we go through your thesis with a view to ensuring that your references are per requirements as per citation style. And we check for the formatting as well to ensure that the guidelines as stated in the UA thesis guide have been adhered to. So that's the pre-submission phase. Let's look at some. These are the other pages of the report. And now we're going to look at some best practices for post-submission. Some best practices for after you would have submitted to OGSR. Now, post-submission to OGSR, your thesis comes to the library for what is called thesis scrutiny. Now, thesis scrutiny is similar to the thesis consultation, where the references and format are reviewed, but this is done after submission to graduate studies. And normally it is the registrar who makes the submission to the library. Now, because you would have contacted the library and you would have gone through thesis consultation, it is anticipated that when your thesis comes back to the library after official submission, you should have very little, if no, corrections to make. And this is how we will know if you attended to the corrections that were given to you in the thesis consultation appointment. Now, the registrar forwards, and when I say registrar, I'm not referring to the campus registrar, I'm referring to the registrar for OGSR. The registrar forwards a copy of the candidate's thesis to the library for review and comments. The library reviews the thesis, again, checking the references and the formatting. The library submits a written report to the registrar. And this is a specimen thesis report. This is a template that is used. It's a template, and so the content for each subsection may change. And note, this time it's addressed to the OGSR. Now, the registrar will return the soft copy of the thesis to the candidate for him or her to attend to all the corrections recommended by the library. Now, after completion of all corrections and confirmation of this, the candidate obtains what we call a thesis certificate from the campus librarian. Please note that I said after all the corrections have been completed, but because you came to this workshop and you learned about the thesis consultation process, your errors would have been identified from early, and so you would be pretty much ready to get your thesis certificate, because prior to submitting your official copies, you would have ensured that you attended to all of the errors. So this is what the thesis certificate looks like, right? And the campus librarian, Dr. Paulette Carr, she signs off on this based on our recommendation to her. Now, after submission, the candidate delivers the required copies of the corrected thesis to the registrar, along with the other specified documents. The registrar sends unbound thesis to the library to be bound, one copy of bound thesis and a certified digital copy for deposit in the library. And again, all of what I'm sharing, you can find this in the thesis, the UE thesis guide. Now, you would recall that at the beginning of today's presentation journey, I shared with you that it is my hope that you would move from not knowing the library's quality partnering role to knowing and calling upon the library's quality partnering role. You would move from indifference to the best practices for formatting and referencing to mindful presentation of best practices for formatting and referencing. I wonder if you are there yet. Let's check. Let's do some activities to check. Now, based on today's presentation, I want for you to answer true or false to each of the following sentences. The title of the thesis should be in bold, caps, single space, and centered at the top of the page. And this is where you can use your microphone.
Yes.
Correct.
True.
Excellent. Preliminary pages should be in Arabic numerals.
Yes.
True.
True.
False.
False.
Should be Roman.
False.
Preliminary pages should be in
Roman.
Roman numerals. Excellent. Excellent.
Except the title page.
Excellent. Display pages are not needed.
True.
True. Excellent. Headings for figures should consistently appear at the bottom of the figure.
True.
True. Excellent. Excellent. True.
Pages.
The referencing process involves 1. Selection of a referencing style. 2. Application of the selected referencing style in text. And 3. Application of the selected referencing style at the end of the paper.
True.
I think that's true. Reference. True.
Anybody says false? All right, excellent. The answer is true. When incorporating the idea of another in text, this can be done through paraphrasing, summarizing, or quoting.
True.
True or false?
I think you should reference it. I think that's false.
True.
True.
Remember, in text, you paraphrase, summarize, or quote whatever it is you would have taken from whatever source. And you provide next to that, whether at the start, middle, end, depending on how you are setting it out, you provide the brief bibliographic details along with the paraphrase or the summary or the quote. So remember, in text, you paraphrase, summarize, quote, you provide the brief bibliographic details, and at the end of the paper, well, I can't tell you because let's go to the next question. Well, I would have told you already. For in-text citation, acknowledgement of the authors or editors whose work or works you've consulted can be done by providing the full bibliographic details in the body of the paper. And I give
False.
false. Excellent. How can the UE Mona Library assist you in the thesis writing process?
Consultation before.
It is consultation.
Yes, excellent. You can do
Also
a thesis.
providing the
Scrutiny. Scrutinize it.
Scrutiny would come post-submission to OGSRS. And yes, you are correct. So the Mona Library can assist you in the thesis writing process at 2 levels, pre-submission and post-submission. The pre-submission phase is the very important one, because if you do that consultation, the errors referencing and formatting should be less. So we do reference checking as per UE thesis guide and format checking as per department's preferred citation style. All right, and I want to give you a little BRAWTA, as we say in Jamaica. BRAWTA is a Jamaican term meaning a little extra. It would be remiss of me not to point out some important products and services to you. You may take a virtual tour of the libraries at this link, which Ms. Smith will share with you. We are physically open Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. but you may visit us online using our social links and email, as well as via our website. Some products are available 24 hours, for example, loan of ebooks and e-journals via UWeLink. And if you don't know how to UWeLink, if you don't know how to use UWeLink, again, you can contact the library. UWeLink is your gateway to accessing print and electronic books, journals, and other types of resources. We offer tablets, Chromebooks, and laptops for extended loan. We have a resource container on the Orville platform. We offer loans. As a postgraduate, you can get up to 6 books for a month, and during the COVID period, our loan time is pretty flexible. We offer digitized resource delivery via email. So if there's a chapter that you're particularly interested in, we can digitize it and send that to you. And if you don't wish to come into the library, we offer curbside delivery. These are some of our other services. We note in particular our TISC IP help desk. You can learn more about that, especially for those of you who will be doing theses with certain types of intellectual property. And look out, well, this training session will be held tomorrow, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And that this would be of interest to you if your department's preferred citation style is APA. And now for conversations. Do you have any questions? Was I clear as mud or clear as crystal? And if you don't want to ask your questions here, feel free to send email.
Oh, Dr. Harris, I have a question.
Yes. Let me just minimize. Let me just come out of presentation mode so that I can see the chat. All right, go ahead with your question.
Okay. With regards to the when you're submitting your completed thesis for examination to the external examiners and so forth, do you need to get an approval from the library as a part of that process? Or is it that when you're submitting the final bounded copies to the library, that's when you have to get the final approval from the library? Just a clarification.
All right. Now, when you do your thesis consultation, the library will alert OJSR to that. That's one. Two, based on the copy that you would have submitted to OJSR, or I should say copies, one will come to us for what we call scrutiny, because this is after the submission phase. Now, if there are no errors in respect of referencing, and if there are no errors in respect of formatting, then the campus librarian will issue the thesis certificate. Does that answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Okay, great. And I'm just going to bring up back the diagram that I had up earlier of the thesis routing process, so you can take another look at what happens. Next question.
Dr. Harris, Do these library services apply only for students doing theses, or can like staff access them also for doing research papers in general?
We are for staff and students, and sometimes the general public will come to us as well. But our primary um, role is serving all the students of the University of the West Indies and all the staff of the University of the West Indies. Does that answer your question?
It does, thanks. And even if the research paper is to be submitted to some other publication or something, you guys will still support staff?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
And remember, earlier I showed you a slide, this slide here. It's one UE Mona library. So any of the librarians in any of the libraries can assist you. And remember as well, I had sent you, well, I had showed you Milu's contact details. You could also contact them here, or if you just want to do a telephone query, you can call any one of the libraries, or you can email any one of the libraries with any research or reference query that you may have. Here are the contact details. Did I answer your question?
You did, thanks. I'm just taking a picture of the screen. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hi, Dr. Harris.
Yes.
Hi. Can you let me know whether in this virtual environment, if you are considering building an FAQ of the common errors, you pointed out that students tend to have across the board. Is it something that maybe would be a useful tool for incoming students and existing doctoral students to access, especially in this virtual environment? Yes, the consultation is a natural part of it because their own work would be scrutinized, but there's this tool that would they can refer to make sure in their writing, they kind of don't do those common errors. Is this something you'd consider?
All right. Well, that is a very good point you've raised, and I will pass that on to Milu so that they can discuss that and take whatever action that is necessary. Also, on the library's page, you have information you have an option, you have a tab that says information. You also have a tab that says resources. The information tab, you can click on that as well, and it will provide information on questions or areas of concern that postgraduates may have. So you can check out that aspect of the website as well. And yes, I will share. I get what you're saying. Having that sort of a do this, don't do that. That's an excellent suggestion.
Yeah, and it's probably something that could be thrown out to the other campuses as well, so that there's that sort of unified almost repository of errors and how to deal with it. So there's something to consider. Thank you. Thanks for sharing it to the power that be.
All right, and I'm just going to bring up the thesis guide. Everybody seeing the thesis guide? I'm just going to briefly skim through the pages so you can see. Everybody seeing thesis guide on their screen?
Yes, we're seeing it.
Okay, thank you for responding. So just to give you a quick go through.
So Dr. Harris, while you're doing that, can I ask a question? If I have a student who is a good researcher but very challenged with writing, or maybe English is not the person's first language, Do we have any facilities to assist that student with writing?
Yes, we have the writing lab on campus. I can send you the details for the writing lab.
Wow, thank you.
All right.
Just a question in relation to the writing lab. I understand that it's almost like a course you're doing, like you have to actually do a research. It's almost like a course. I'm wondering if that, it feels like a course getting some feedback from a student, and it takes away from other activities that their supervisor may ask them to do. And so I'm wondering if it's a case where it should, you know, we should set aside some sort of time, or lecturers need to understand, supervisors need to understand that the course, well, I'm saying course, but it's, you know, a little intense, the writing. And so, you know, you have to understand when students cannot do other aspects, that is because they're writing, working on that course. Because I'm not sure about it, but it's just a feedback from a student that it's a lot of work, like a lot of research they have to do to prepare some sort of paper.
Okay.
I don't know if you can shed any light on
I'm
that.
sure you would appreciate the process, you know. Writing is a process, and I believe what the writing lab is doing is taking participants through that very deep process that is involved in writing. But I am sure the writing lab is not a rigid department, so I am sure that they can always work out something for you if it is that you would want something different from what you are getting through.
I don't think so, Dr. Harris. I think I appreciate it. I just think, based on Marcia's question, I think sometimes even as supervisors, we don't understand the extent of the work. So I think it's something that supervisors themselves have to be aware of, because I got some feedback from a student that, you know, they were written up on not being able to do certain aspects, but this part of it was taking a lot. So I am saying, I'm not sure what it entails, but I myself am very interested in finding out a little bit more details on it.
So perhaps, Prof. Roy, maybe you want to make contact with the writing center so that they can do a similar workshop.
That's an excellent idea, but as a scientist, you must realize that writing, we in science and technology think that the bench work and the lab work is what is challenging, and once you get that done, you're very happy. But let me tell you that the writing is a challenge for many of us. Even as a professor today, Dr. Harris, the hardest thing for me is to start with a blank piece of paper. It is a challenge, and when you read it 5 or 6 times, you stop seeing your errors, you stop seeing your students' errors. It gets very frustrating. So if you have a student, or if you yourself can write well, it's an addition to your career. It's a skill that all of us have to develop, and you only can improve your writing by writing. No amount of talking about it, no amount of reading about it is going to help you until you learn to write. So I agree with you, Rose. It's a very intense process, but if we're going to train scientists, this is one of the very important skills that they need to have. I send a paper to a publisher and they send it back with lots of corrections. It breaks my heart, man, because that was my best effort. And one time it took me a whole year to work up the courage to go back over it and fix it again. And guess what? I was so upset. I'm not sending it to that publisher again. I'm sending it to somebody else. So
I understand.
So we have to learn to write properly. Otherwise, the science get lost in all the errors.
Yes,
So
yes.
What I was wondering is if we cannot have it as a course in and of itself, like how we have foundation courses and 3-credit courses and all these for the grad students, because it's critical and it's not something that you learn overnight, even if they go and do it in a 2 months or so. It's not something that is learned overnight. But I think for geographers, human geographers, for example, they have been writing from first year to third year, and even then, we have seen issues in terms of writing styles and just the academic writing. So I don't know. I'm just trying to think how best, because I don't think we utilize the writing center a lot. And I don't know how many of us as supervisors are aware of what they are offering. So that workshop might just be as important as this one.
Yeah, I will do that. But sometimes, Rose, we also send many of our graduate students to do a writing course. And all our undergrads do critical reading and writing. But science writing need particular skills, man. And even today, after 25 years, I still struggle with it. And many people, many of the best scientists that I know still do, because some of us don't like to write. We love being in the lab. So it's an important skill. And if you're going to do it well, it's going to take a lot of effort. So we just need to accept that. But yeah, thank you for the idea. The writing lab. We'll organize that.
And just to let you know that a number of the publishers have a copy editing service. It's often not free, but it is an option that one could consider. The copy editing service, so an editor will go through your paper with a view to check in the syntax, the grammar, the everything. We also have copy editors here in Jamaica that I can refer you to if you're interested. And then the best option is to actually go through learning how to write. And the best department for that is the writing lab. Any other questions for me?
You hearing
Yes.
me?
Yes.
Okay. So, I don't know if you answered this question before, or I probably missed it. For students outside of Jamaica, when trying to get the consultation, could we submit via email, or do we have to send a hard copy of the thesis to the library?
Okay, thank you for that question. You can submit your copy. We recommend that you convert it from Word to PDF for the obvious reasons, or you can use a Dropbox and you can email it to us. And we will review and give you a report within 1 to 7 business days. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Let me see if I'm missing any hand. All right, so this is the thesis guide, just to show you illustrative matter. Look at the guidelines for illustrative matter. Look at the guidelines for oversized material and what you should do. Length of thesis is as per faculty, so it varies by faculty. This page looks familiar, yeah? It was in my presentation. Pagination, margins, spacing, and the exceptions, preface, and the table of contents. Title page, abstract, no more than 300 words, acknowledgements, table of contents. Note there is a difference between abbreviations and acronyms. Pagination. Note the punctuation marks for figures and tables, very important. When 2 or more appendices are required, they should be designated Appendix A, Appendix B, etc. Tables and figures in appendices should be numbered. Table A1, which would indicate that Table 1 is from Appendix 1. Mr. L, could you read that question in the chat for me, please? Or
Okay, Dr. Harris. The question is from Sidani Brown Grizel. What if you are yet through writing your thesis, but still would want to engage in a consultation? Would this be facilitated?
Certainly, that's why the Mona librarians are here. We are here to answer your every and any questions and to assist you no matter how elementary you may perceive it to be. So I have had candidates whose theses is yet to be completed and they still come and consult with me and with other Mona librarians. Does that answer your question, Sidoni? So even before you get started,
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You can send us an email, you can call us, whichever option you prefer. Note this very important page, page 19. You want to know number of copies required, although I think Professor Roy normally has another segment of this workshop where the registrar speaks about these things. The publication of thesis, note binding of thesis, some important guidelines here on page 20. And here we have appendices. Any other questions? All right, if there are no other questions, I will turn over to Professor Roy.
Sorry, just making sure that everybody is satisfied and all your questions have been answered. Remember, we're going to try to organize something with the writing lab, maybe in the next semester. So if you have interest in that, you can let us know so we know where the interest lies. If there are other workshops that the graduate students are interested in or staff, then we can also try to resource those and to accommodate your needs. So I'm giving you one last chance. If you think of anything else, of course, if you think of it afterwards, then you can always contact Dr. Harris or Mr. Rell or the library.
Yes, so here are the details. So you can just take a pic of that quickly or swipe screen or whatever device it is that you're using. And let me bring up Milou's details as well. Here is Milou's.
Okay, so while that is on the screen, we're going to ask Marcel to do the vote of thanks. Marcel, are you with us?
Good afternoon, Prof. Roy. I'm here, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Harris for taking time out of her busy schedule to hold this thesis consultation workshop with us. It was very detailed and informative. I've learned a lot about some of the common errors that we make as graduate students, and I'll keep it in mind. I also like the fact that you're showing us how we can fully unlock the library's potential by partnering with the librarians within the faculty. And we will be partnering more with you moving forward as graduate students. You can trust me on that. Again, thank you for your efforts. It is duly appreciated. And I look forward to get this recording to circulate it to the rest of the graduate students who would find it very informative. Thank you again.
You are most welcome. It was my pleasure. And all the best for the rest of the academic year and stay safe during this period. period.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
again, Dr. Harris and your team. And I would also like to thank the faculty office, especially Sabraham and Terry, who helped to put this together and will continue to send us information about this workshop. I remind you, if you have needs, just let us know, because we are here to serve you. And when I come to those oral exams, I only want the best, as you do. So thank you very much. And have a good afternoon. We appreciate your presence with us.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.